I'll be talking a little bit about basic needs, getting set up for a small backyard poultry operation. So things to think about before starting, and this is true for any kind of farming. You always want to begin with the end in mind. What's your goal? Do you want to have fresh eggs? Are they going to be pets, or is it for meat production? Is this something that's going to become a business? Do you want to teach your children how to responsibly care for livestock? Are you going to have show birds? Or do you just enjoy, caring for poultry? And this will be a hobby. There's a lot of questions, and there isn't a correct answer. It's pretty much, what is best for your situation. So before you start with any kind of livestock production or any kind of livestock operation, you want to make sure you have all your eggs in a row, or your ducks in a row. You want to make sure that you check with your local, your county, your state, and even federal zoning and environmental requirements or environmental regulations. As some towns may prohibit poultry flocks in the area. For zoning, regulations are usually specific about animals and environmental considerations such as flies, odor, and noise. You also want to consider the proximity of your neighbors and their opinions. And just a good rule of thumb, good neighbor relations are extremely important. Home flocks, no matter how big the size, require water, food, and daily care, which include weekends, nights. So it's a responsibility. You're responsible for living beings, for animals. And so caring for a flock, it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week commitment that begins with your first bird. So now that you've decided that you wanted to start off with chickens, you want to get on the right foot. We've mentioned what's your goal. So depending on your answer to that question, will determine what kind of breed of chicken you want to acquire. So are you looking to have eggs? Are you looking for meat? Or are you looking for something that's, both? So first, we're going to talk about your egg producing breed. So a term that is typically used is your egg layers. And so a flock size varies with individual family needs. So a good commercial breed with some sound management and nutrition and sanitation can produce about 240 to 200 eggs during the first 12-month cycle. Birds are kept for a second cycle, produce approximately 20% fewer eggs. So in determining the number of birds to meet family egg needs, you want to consider these factors. So does the bird doesn't lay every day, and eggs are produced in clutches. And a clutch is a group of eggs produced by the hen on consecutive days, and the number of eggs per clutch varies. So a bird may lay an egg per day for 5 or 6, 7 days, and then skip a couple days, and then lay another clutch. So on average, you're going to have 240 to about 240 plus eggs in a year's period. And then things that will affect that egg production are going to be your adverse conditions, such like a cold spell. So the weather interrupting on your light schedule. So you have longer days in the summer. It starts to drop in the fall. Depending on if they don't have access to feed or water, that's going to throw off egg production. So you just want to plan to meet your family's needs. So like I said in the first slide, if this is going to become a business, or if this is just so that you're producing your own food, you want to know exactly what your goal is. And then if you're going to sell, what's the plan? Obviously, there's resources and things that we can talk about creating a business plan. But for today's talk, it's more of a backyard homesteading goal. So then this slide has a couple breeds. There's obviously more breeds, but for some layer breeds that we've seen up in the Northeast, you have your Rhode Island Reds, your Golden Comet, your Buff Orpingtons, your New Hampshire, Black Astrolofts, the Golden Comet Pullet Chicks. And so these are things, these are some of the different breeds of your egg laying chickens. Most common for commercial egg production are your white leghorns, but they're a little skittish, but they'll produce the most eggs. For backyard breeds, Rhode Island Reds, Golden Comets, Buff Orpingtons, New Hampshires, and Black Astrolofts are good options, and they make nice pets. So depending on what breed of chicken you have will determine the egg color. And research shows that there aren't any nutritional differences based on the color of the egg. It's a misconception, but if you want your brown or your white eggs, depending on the color of the egg is going to be determined by your breed. So if your next option, if you're interested in meat production, you want to look into your meat producing birds, your broilers, chickens that are raised solely for meat. Your common broiler breeds are going to be a Cornish and a Plymouth Rock cross. They are broad-breasted and larger than the laying breeds, and they are typically harvested around between 3.5 to 5 pounds. So most of these commercial hybrid broilers are the most efficient birds available. They're the commercial hybrids are extremely efficient in producing meat. So since there are a four-way cross hybrid, they should be not raised beyond 10 weeks of age or kept for breeding. However, they will produce a meaty 5-pound carcass in about 6 weeks, and that's about 9 pounds of feed. Purebred poultry, most commonly raised for meat, are Cornish, Plymouth Rocks, and White Jersey Giants, but the purebreds are less efficient, and they take about 14 weeks to develop a desirable carcass, and they're never going to produce as much meat on their frame. So when considering birds for meat production, select birds with light colored plumage, and your dark feather birds are less desirable because of their dark pin feathers left after slaughter. So this is an example of a broiler operation. Again, your live weights are going to be about 4 to 5 pounds. So they can be achieved on close to 2 pounds of feed per pound of meat. And then when you're about to slaughter, 3 to 4 pounds for a fryer should be slaughtered around 4 to 5 weeks of age, and then 4 to 6 pound broilers slaughtered about 6 to 7 weeks of age. And 8 pounds or heavier are your roasters, and then they're going to be slaughtered around 8 to 10 weeks of age. Remember, as the birds get older and they're larger, they become less efficient, and then they eat a greater amount of feed for each pound of weight gain. So you want to remember that for your production costs. And older birds produce more fat, so slaughtering the birds as close to the desired weight as possible is highly recommended. So next we have our dual purpose breed. The dual purpose poultry breeds are what most people think of your typical small family farm poultry. These birds will lay and they will grow large enough and quickly enough to produce a bird suitable for home consumption. However, these breeds are not suitable for commercial enterprises. So raised for both meat and egg production. So you're getting a little the best of both worlds. It's not going to be optimum for egg production or for meat, but you split the difference. So the sex-linked variety is a crossbred chicken, which their color at hatching is differentiated by its sex, so you can make the chick sexing an easier process rather than the pure strains. And they're preferred for a small family flock, and in general, best meets the need for egg and meat production. And these breeds are typically calm and friendly. So the next question typically is, where should I purchase my birds? Well, depending on what you're looking for, if you're in the show ring, you're going to want to find a breeder, just like in any other type of livestock or animal production. And then for your backyard or even for commercial, you'll be looking at one of the commercial hatcheries or even a local farm store. All right, so now you're convinced that you want to start raising poultry. You want to get some chicks. So we're going to go over the project and equipment checklist. You want to make sure you have healthy chicks. You want to have a brooder and a brooder guard. So essentially what those are, we're going to talk a little bit more about them, but it's your housing and your setup, and it's going to change depending or it's going to change during the stages of life. So you're going to have a setup for the birds when they're a few weeks old to when they start getting older. You want to make sure you have feeders, waterers, fencing with your housing, and what you're going to feed your animals. So you want to make sure you get ready ahead of time. You want to create a comfortable and controlled environment for the chicks. So we're going to go over that in the next couple slides of some examples. You want to make sure that they have protection, heat sources, access to water, and you're providing them the proper feeding. And so there's definitely different types of feed for chickens, and there's different nutritional requirements for the stages of life. So you want to make sure you pay attention. We're going to talk about that too. So when you're getting ready, you want to make sure they have adequate space, and you want to create a holding area for your chicks the first 10 days or so. Your objectives: you want to keep them warm and comfortable. You want to make sure they're close to their feed and water, and you want them to adjust to their environment. Approximately 1 square foot per chick, and your housing options. So there's different examples. You can put them in a cardboard or wooden box, a stock tank, or brooder guard. In the next couple slides, you're going to see some more examples. But essentially, something that can contain, keep them safe, keep them warm, keep them clean and fed. So in these pictures, on the first couple of days, they're pretty small. You have some paper towels that are going underneath, so it's an easy cleanup. They have access to feed. There's water. You want to make sure those waterers are cleaned. They are going to make a mess, so you want to make sure you clean it up regularly. But this can be contained in one of those like tubs, like the plastic tubs where you can put like clothes and stuff, a storage container, something that's super small. You want to make sure it's pretty safe, especially if you're using a heat source, which you should, because they need to have adequate heat. So yeah, so here's an example. So you have your bucket, you have some shavings, you can put down paper towels, but you have your heat lamp, you have your clean feed, the water is pretty clean. And so I also like this picture because it shows you that these guys are cold. So you can definitely tell that your birds need more heat based off of where they're positioned in their little brooder. If they're all huddled up underneath the heat source, it's too cold. If they're huddled away from, like, it's kind of like a circle where they're away from the heat source, it's too hot. And like I said, lighting is super important. You need to keep them cold. They're at their most vulnerable stage of life. But again, this is another example of a setup. You have your bedding. There's, well, you can't really see the feed, but their water is pretty clean. Oh yeah, because they're sitting on. Never mind. They're sitting on their food dish. And so again, these are just examples. When you get the birds get a little bit older, they're going to start moving into a more permanent spot. But for now, these are just some examples for your, you starting out. Again, bedding, feed, and water, and a heat source are, super important. So again, the birds are getting a little bit bigger. You can put them into a brooder house, or start to get them ready for a coop. Again, heat source, water, feed, bedding. It's imperative that they get fresh water. They have access to fresh water at all times. And that's true for any kind of livestock production. Water can be, without water, it can limit your production. Space requirements, obviously, the bigger the bird, the more space they're going to need. But this is just a chart of minimum space requirements per bird. So your bantam chickens require at least 1 square foot if inside, a little bit more space outside. And depending on the size of the bird, they're gonna require more if they're larger. Cleanliness is super important because this is your first defense against disease. Making sure your birds are clean will one, be a healthier bird, which then at the end gives you a healthier product. They live longer, which in turn is more productivity and profitability. I know I mentioned about specific diets depending on the stage of life. There's different feed requirements for your birds. So when your chicks are younger, your first feed or your first requirement is a starter. So there's more protein. Obviously, babies need more protein to grow. They used to sell them medicated to prevent coccidiosis, but now you need a VFD, the veterinary feed derivative. And so if you're buying your feed from a feed store, you're going to be getting your non-medicated feed. And so for the starter and the grower, you're going to be feeding, it's an 18% 18 to 28% protein, depending on the feed, but for the first 22 weeks. Then you're going to have a different diet for your layers, about 16 to 18% protein. You still need a high percentage of protein because they're going to be producing eggs, and a lot of those requirements are going to go to that egg production. And so to offset that productivity through the birds for their health, you want to still feed them a high diet of a high percentage of protein. And then feed for meat birds, especially, is going to be high in protein as well. It's going to be higher than layers, 23 to 28% in the first 3 weeks, and then finishing a little bit lower at 20 to 20%, which would be your broiler ration. And you can buy all of these feeds that are already established for you. And so I really enjoy this slide because it shows you the importance of proper nutrition. These are two birds that were hatched at the same time in the same group. The bird on the left was fed a cracked corn, so a 7% protein diet, where the bird on the right was fed a commercial feed at 22% of protein. And so you can see that you can see the bird on the right is much better looking and healthier. You can see that they're the two birds at the same age that were hatched and bred at the same time. The difference in appearance, the size, and maturity is because of the difference in feeding. So this is just, showing you the importance of feeding them the proper diet. So for housing, housing is super important because it has different, it serves different needs. So it's protection from heat in the sun, so your weather, and then also predators. And so you just want to remember, yes, you want some sort of housing structure, but you also don't want it too tight. So this shows you that ventilation is super important. You want airflow. So in order to provide a comfortable building for chickens, it's super necessary to keep in mind a few basic concepts regarding ventilation. So warm air rises and cooler air, being heavier, settles to the floor. So adequate air circulation and exchange is necessary to keep different air temperatures from stratifying and becoming stale. So warm air holds more moisture than the cold air. So for every 18 degrees Fahrenheit increase in air temperature, its water holding capacity doubles. So this concept is super important in managing potential moisture buildup, particularly in a well-insulated, tightly sealed chicken coop. So ventilation needs in the summer are different than in the winter. So during your summer months, warm, stale air must be removed, allowing fresh air to enter and circulate. And during cold seasons, only enough cold air should be allowed in for adequate air exchange. So it's preferred to bring this air in from near the roof of the building, which allows it to warm as it drops for the floor. This colder air will warm by the bird's own body heat and temperature, and with additional heaters if it's really cold outside, and picks up the moisture. So a method must be available to vent this air from the building and allowing the cycle to continue. And these are just some figures that show this. So it's different during the summer versus the winter, but it's super important. So chickens flock on roosts that stay much cleaner than those that spend the night on the floor. So this is a picture of a roost where it keeps the chickens from getting underneath. The chicken house stays cleaner for longer, which is super important, keeping them healthy, because much of the manure is under the roost. And then chickens that spend most of their daytime hours in the chicken house will be on the roost, be on the roost some of the time as well. Nest boxes are super important. You want to provide at least one nesting box for every 5 birds. These boxes should be bedded with a deep layer of shaving unless they're designed as a rollout box. For bedded nest box, you want to clean them out and replace the bedding when they get soiled. And so a clean nest box will help keep your eggs clean. And then chickens also love shade. Um, so these are a couple pictures of birds being in protective shade. It helps protect from the sun, but also from predators. One thing to realize though, if they are, or if they do have access to shade and bushes and things, to keep an eye out on those bushes. So when I worked for Cornell Cooperative Extension, one of the producers called me, and they had started a small chicken operation, and they let their layers out, have free range, and they thought something was wrong because they thought they weren't producing any eggs because they weren't laying in the coop. And so when I went and did the farm visit, we went, asked them a couple questions and said, where do they spend most of their day? And they're like, oh, they're out in the, in the woods, in the bushes. So we walked over there, and all the eggs were in the bushes. So just, keep that in the back of your mind. If you have, if they spend a lot of time out in a shaded area with bushes and things, and you're not finding eggs, that could be where they're laying. Another option for a setup for your operation is chicken tractors. They're super trendy. Definitely seen this out in New York, and even on some operations here in New Jersey. So your chicken tractor, it's a small and mobile structure that shades the chickens from the sun, keeps them dry in the rain, provides a windbreak, protects them from predators, while allowing them to free access the pasture. It also helps with manure management. So essentially, you're moving your chicken tractor throughout your field once the patch of pasture grass is highly manured, and so you can use this as a pasture management strategy as well. But this is just another option for a poultry setup. Things to be aware of are your poultry predators. So when we're talking about housing structures or different methods of protection, yes, we're talking about weather, but we're also talking about predators, especially if you're raising poultry for a business sense. You want to protect your product, and if they're a pet or part of the family as well, you want to make sure that they're safe. There are a lot of predators in our area, so with some proper management, you can deter your predators away. So fencing, guard dogs, roosters sometimes will help, depending on what your predator is, but there are a bunch. So there's aerial predators like your hawks and your land predators. There's some raccoons, possums, minks, weasels, foxes, even some wolves. In this picture of a skunk. But one of the worst predators is the weasel, because they can get in through a half an inch of a hole, and they're the worst because they kill for sport. It's not even like, oh, they're doing this to survive. If you see the little two holes in the, of a puncture the back of the neck, they just bleed out the chicken, and just for sport. So making sure you have proper fencing for a barrier. So, this is a great example. You have a housing structure. It's probably not the best for a coop, but you get the picture, having a coop and then having a barrier outside. There's different strategies. So like we're talking about the chicken tractors, moving them through the pasture. I've seen people use electronet to move around for livestock production that wants to graze. Probably not best for chickens, but having some area for them to roam. But having a perimeter fence to keep predators out. Sometimes if you have predators that dig, I've seen where people will dig a hole for their fence so that the fencing or chicken wire is below the surface as well, so that it prevents predators from digging below and then going into the area that your chickens are housed. And then you're also potentially want to put netting up. So this is if you have aerial predators, extremely lightweight to work with. Your top right netting, it's like a 2-inch mesh. It's easy to cut. It's not going to rust. You can fasten with cable ties. You can staple or nail it. And especially handy for tops of the smaller pens due to the ease of cutting it to fit. But this helps protect your birds from aerial predators, as well as having a fence to protect from your land predators. So animal health management is super important. We discussed the importance of keeping your birds clean, because that's going to be your first line of defense. But it's also important to establish a partnership with a veterinarian, which is a challenge, especially in New Jersey, especially with poultry production. But this is something that's super important that you should be aware of, regardless of what kind of livestock you plan to raise. And then you also want to remember that diseases are possible, and you want to have some sort of disease and vaccination management plan. You want to make sure that you're ready to combat for parasites, common poultry diseases. What is your plan for antibiotics, vaccinations, and what's your biosecurity plan? Is this something? Is this a small farm that just your family is going to be on? Or are you going to be having visitors? Are these visitors going to other farms? How are you going to are you going to add more animals to your flock? Are you going to get new birds? How long are you going to isolate them so that you're not bringing a sick or diseased into your established flock? So these are things to keep on your radar. If you have questions about this, I can send you some more information. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but essentially these are things that you want to remember when you're establishing any kind of livestock production. And then this slide pretty much tells you, where you can get your help, and it's okay to ask for help. Obviously, Cooperative Extension is a great resource. If you have questions, you can always reach out to me. I will post my contact information at the end of the presentation, which is coming up soon. But Cooperative Extension is a great resource. Dr. Westendorf is the livestock extension specialist here at Rutgers, and about a year ago, him and I created a poultry fact sheet, and I'll give you the link and information for that. But there are lots of publications and or resources through Cooperative Extension, not just at Rutgers, but throughout the United States. That has a lot of valuable information. Going to these workshops as well. And then there's also other organizations. This is more on the commercial side, but you have your soil water district offices. You know, USDA has information, and I know North Jersey RC&D also has resources more for commercial farms, but there are resources that you can get out there. Farm neighbors are super helpful, along with the Farm Bureau. Being a member there, you know, is a great networking platform, and gives you access to a lot of different resources as well. So these are just some of the fact sheets that I used for the information I got through this presentation. I'm sure Kate can send out the slides if anybody wants the access to my slides. We can do that, and that's it. So hopefully, if you enjoyed the presentation, if you have any questions, you can ask. I haven't been following on the chat, but if there's questions that you have after this presentation, feel free to reach out. This is my contact information. Again, my name is Hank Bignell. I work at the Warren County Extension Office up in Warren County, up in Belvedere.
Hey, Hank, we do have a question
Okay.
for you, if you don't mind.
Oh man, chat. There's a lot.
Sean asked for layer production, do you recommend culling after the first or second year?
So yeah, it depends, depending on your management strategy. If it's, you know, you're looking for depending on how many eggs you're looking for, you're after that first year, they're going to decrease 20%. So if that's enough eggs for you, or your system, by all means, but you know, if you're looking for maximum egg production, then yeah, culling after the first year would be, you know, again, depending on what your goals are. So I see one that says, are chickens sensitive to the rain? Yeah, they do not do well when they're wet, you know, so you want to make sure that you keep them dry. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but you know, it's essentially most livestock, they don't produce at their maximum potential when they're wet.
Hank, there's a question we have here. Is our cost benefit analysis to determine the break-even point for starting a backyard operation, trying to determine how many eggs would need to be consumed to offset startup costs and annual maintenance?
So that is a great question, and something that I've tried to do in the past, but again, it all depends. I'm not aware of something straightforward like that. But that's something that you want to consider before doing this. You know, is this something that are you looking to make money? Are you going to break even? Is that okay? I know that's something answer that you're looking for, but I'm not aware of something like that, but I can see if I can find something.
Here's another question for you. Best location for housing: sun, part shade, morning sun, doesn't matter.
So essentially your housing is going to help, you know, protect, you know, from the weather elements. So if it's protecting you from essentially it doesn't really matter. You just want them to have, you know, availability to that shade. Okay, man, these are getting tough. Is there a difference in the quality of ingredients in feed, example, additive-free specific type of protein. I'm not aware of. I'd have to look into that.
Hank, there's an earlier question. What would be better for beginner? Would you recommend starting with chicks and eggs to hatch, or fully grown birds, specifically with regards to egg laying birds?
So I guess it all depends on what your plan is. But if you're getting, most of the time when people start out, they get the chicks. You know, they start out with chicks, and sometimes they get a little bit. They get more than they essentially want, because you're factoring for, you know, survival rate. Most of the time when people have older birds, again, it comes down to, especially for laying, you know, their maximum egg production is in that first year. And most of the time, people don't take in older birds into their flock for, you know, decrease in egg production, but also a biosecurity standpoint. So, perfect example, when I worked for the University of Florida, we would get calls all the time from the police, or from animal control, where they would confiscate a flock and then not know what to do with the birds because no one wanted to take them. Because established farmers, you know, aren't introducing new birds into their flock, or, you know, you have to have space and different facilities to keep them isolated so that you don't bring in more disease or things to influence your, you know, your current flock. So yeah, no, I would recommend start out with eggs. So you can purchase eggs and incubate them, or you can just purchase the day-old chicks. And so when you do that, you want to call the post office to let them know that they're expecting an order, so they make sure that they're not there that long, or they're not spooked with chirping packages.
I think that gets to another question, which is there a list of New Jersey-based hatcheries? Instead of ordering chicks, is there some kind of resource on hatcheries in New Jersey?
So not sure of specifics. I don't believe there are. I know there are some in Pennsylvania and New York. For a list, if there is a list out there, I'm unaware of it.
Another question about egg production. Does egg production go down 20% every year, or is that just after the first year?
So after, I'm not sure of the percentage, but after every year, it continually decreases. I think like after 6 or 7 years, you know, it's very seldom. But again, you know, it all comes down to your goal, and if they're pets and you have your kids and things, you know, it's tougher to let them go the longer you have them.
Hank, I got another question that comes in quite a bit. What are your thoughts on these pre-made chicken coops that you see at, you know, a lot of the supply places and stuff?
So from my experience, some of you still need to have it inspected, not like, you know, officially, but they're the ones that I've come across. Yes, it looks pretty awesome, but you just want to make sure that it's sound. I know we had a couple examples up in the fairgrounds up in Warren County that not that they were faulty, but you know, you just want to make sure that it's high quality, but there's a lot of things that if you're looking at it as from a cost basis, there's a lot of things that you can do on your own to save money that are, you know, just as good or even better. I would just, you know, you got to determine how much you're willing to spend, if it's going to be cost efficient, and then how long it's actually going to last.
And here's the other question that comes up. What do you do with chickens after they stop producing? And Lisa, I have an answer for you from Kenny.
Well, that's where you can use it as a dual purpose breed, depending on what it is, and use it as a meat product, or, you know, or just culling it.
Yeah, there are people who don't want to cull. Do you know of any place? I was told if there's one place you can call they'll take them. Do you know of any?
Like a sanctuary?
Yeah, I guess.
I'm not sure of any locally. I know they exist. So there are options like that.
Hank, I had a question about the importance of light for egg laying.
Okay.
Is there a way, you know, we're getting into the fall and daylight is certainly shortening. Is there a way to continue to increase or maintain egg production by adding supplemental light, or is that not recommended?
No, you definitely can. It just, again, it's one of those things that you have to be aware of on a management perspective for, you know, cost efficiencies. But yeah, no, that's, you know, that's something that they do with commercial production. And in grad school, we did a research project for the animal nutrition class. But essentially the lights are on timers inside the barn. And so essentially it's mocking that light schedule for your peak hours in the summer. But yeah, no, that's something that's definitely doable. Again, you just have to weigh out the cost analysis. Is this something that makes financial sense for your operation?
Thanks, Hank. I know, Kate, we've got to start wrapping this up because people only have an hour for lunch. Is there anything that you wanted to point out for the next session or announce?
Hank, can you go to the next slide?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I guess I just would want to thank everyone for being here and having such a good turnout. Our next webinar will be Tuesday, November 9th on mushroom production. So by registering for this set of 3 webinars, you have already the Zoom link to attend those. So you're welcome to just use that same Zoom link to attend the next Homesteading Academy webinar, and we will have the participation list, so we'll be able to keep track of everyone's accumulated hours with our Homesteading Academy, so we can get those certificates out to everyone who really puts the time in over the next year.
And another thing I want to remind everybody is we'll be getting a survey via email coming up on what you thought, so please be honest with us. And I also wanted to thank Hank for being the inaugural speaker today. I know it was a little intimidating, but thank you.
Thank you, Hank.
Oh, my pleasure. And again, if anybody has any questions or just wants to chat about poultry, feel free to reach out. And if you need the slides, just let Kate know and I can send them out.